Beaming you aboard for more here on A Captain's Log, streaming at warp speed. I'm Bryan Kreutz, and my co-host Lili Fox-Lim is ready to ease the learning curve of Klingonese, the official Klingon language, via a subspace frequency. And who better to introduce Lili than the creator of the Klingon language in Mark Okrand.
Hi, Mark Okrand, and you're learning Klingon from Lili Fox-Lim. Dr. Kim, Klingon
Do you want a leg up in dating? Humans who speak Klingon have been shown to be romantically irresistible to other humans. So I'm here to help with a couple easy Klingon phrases. Number 1, Nuk milich. This means, what is your number? Nuk is the question word what, mi is the noun meaning number, and lich is the suffix meaning your. And although this is a question, it doesn't include the question particle ah, because it's not a yes or no question. Number 2, Bishuv tach vish. Behejach. This means, may you die in battle. Klingons believe in dying an honorable death through fighting. So this is a very sexy wish for someone. So be is the prefix for you with no object. Klingon verb prefixes indicate the subject and the object. Shuv is the verb to fight. Cher is the verb to die. And I'm running out of time, so part 2, coming soon.
Many thanks, Lili. I hear Shakespeare in the original Klingon is a masterpiece and worth of an warrior's time. This is a Captain's Log streaming at warp speed. I'm Bryan Kreutz, and we're joined for a 4th and final week in a row by Leslie Hoffman, who gave us her top 10 favorite Star Trek Season 2 episodes last week. Leslie will be going through her top 10 Star Trek The Original Series Season 3 episodes this week here on A Captain's Log, in order, of course, starting at number 10. Leslie, glad to have you back with us here again.
Hi, this is Leslie Hoffman, and I'm here to talk my favorite top 10 of Star Trek Season 3. I'd like to start off with episode 10. And it is the Mark of Gideon. Kirk is beaming down to a planet to see if they qualify to join the Federation. And he gets on the transport and beams down, or he thinks he's beaming down, but he ends up on the transporter, and all the people on the Enterprise are gone. And he starts looking around the Enterprise, and he can't find anybody. In the meantime, on the real Enterprise, Spock is asking the people on the planet, has Kirk come down, or has he joined you? And there, no, he hasn't shown up yet. And Spock is asking, can I beam down to this coordinates? And they're saying, no, you can't beam down, which is strange. Spock asks to beam down to the coordinates that they gave Kirk, and the council refuses, and Spock is stuck. He can't do anything. He's even called the Federation later in the episode, and the Federation won't let him do anything. The council won't let him do anything. So Spock just doesn't know where Kirk is. Meantime, Kirk is going through the Enterprise, trying to find his crew, and he comes upon a woman named Anna, and together they're looking to see what's happened. I mean, Kirk just can't figure any of this out. Kirk realizes that he's missing 9 minutes of his life, which he can't figure out, and he has a bruise on his arm, which he also can't figure out. And O'Donna is starting to get sick. It turns out that the planet believes that life is so precious that they don't believe in contraception, and the planet is overpopulated, which I find a hole in the episode. So as O'Donna gets sicker, it turns out that the people of the planet is hoping that she's going to die of this disease, so that pass the disease on to others and they can die, which again, I find that a big loophole in this episode, uh, because, again, they don't believe in contraception, they don't believe in abortion, but they believe in dying a horrible death of a disease is okay. Anyways, Spock asks if he can down at least something to the planet because he's still looking for Kirk, and he's given a different set of coordinates. So, that experiment works. Now Spock decides that he is going to ignore the Federation and the planet and beams down, and he too ends up in this empty Enterprise. Spock finds Kirk and O'Donna, and they do bring her back to the Enterprise, and McCoy does cure her of the disease. And now the planet, or the council of the planet, decides that Kirk, they don't need Kirk anymore because they can use O'Donna as the carrier of the disease. So I'm not sure why it is number 10, but that is my choice for 10.
Oh, Leslie, thank you. The Enterprise in synchronous orbit over the capital city of Gideon, a candidate for Federation membership. Kirk beams down, or thinks he does, to a transport room identical to the room that he just beamed out from. Now, he is held captive on an empty duplicate Enterprise. Kirk meets a woman named O'Donna who yearns for a chance to live far away from her vastly overrated world, a world where no one dies and where people are shoulder to shoulder seemingly constantly. Now, the Gideons hope to introduce to the population a rare disease carried by Captain Kirk, allowing their people to age and die as they once did centuries ago. Now, then comes the idea of billions of people literally piled up together upon each other because of overpopulation. Now, an ominous foreshadowing of something feels as though it's about to occur, imply a mass of people watching them when Kirk embraces O'Donna. These faces of multiple other hooded people appear on the Enterprise bridge view screen, but it's unseen by Kirk and O'Donna. Soon thereafter, Kirk sees and says that he knows every sound that the Enterprise makes, and the thumping sound heard by him and O'Donna is very unusual. Then, startling like we've never seen him startled before, Kirk is taken back and jumps with O'Donna when he opens a viewport. Ghostly appearances of the dense planetary population in great masses are seen, all of whom wear bodysuits covering all but their faces and hands. Kirk surmising the thumping sound was the heartbeats of all the people that he saw outside the window. Now, I truly enjoyed the contest of semantics between Spock and Gideon, Prime Minister Hoden.
Number 9 is That Which Survives. And that also is a interesting episode of, in this case, death for a different reason. But just as the landing party is ready to beam down to a planet, this woman appears, Larissa, and she touches the transporter person, and he immediately dies. Now you have the landing party down on the planet, and what happens is she appears, and she always says, I am for and Sulu or Kirk, and they heard that if she says the name of a certain person but touches a different crew person, nothing happens. But if she touches the crew person that she named, like in one case it is Sulu, and she touches his elbow, his shoulder, but he falls backwards, that she just it's only a touch, but that light touch basically exploded the cells in his shoulder. They finally find a chamber, and it turns out that there's a computer. And what the storyline was these people colonized this planet, and the computer was just trying to protect itself from invaders, and it had to create an image, and the only image it had was this woman, Larissa. So that's why you see Larissa appear, and like you say, she calls out a person's name and touches them, and it kills them. But it turns out that there was a virus that killed people. And the sad part is they realize, even though the computer projecting the image of Larissa protects the planet, it's really protecting it from nobody, because that race of people died out a long time ago.
Yes, one of the very last handful of original Star Trek episodes broadcast on television survives. It begins with a planet whose size is approximately that of Earth's moon, yet mass and atmosphere are similar to Earth. Stranger yet is that it's apparently only a few thousand years old, this planet. Its geological age is much less than the indigenous vegetation and atmospheric content would indicate. Now, Captain Kirk is intrigued by the unexplainable planet and organizes a landing party consisting of himself, Dr. McCoy, helmsman Sulu, and senior geologist. Now, Diamanto's tricorder reads an energy burst of almost immeasurable power while on the planet's surface. When Kirk is unable to raise the Enterprise on his communicator, Sulu discovers that the Enterprise is missing from orbit. Now, effectively stranding the landing party on the planet because the Enterprise is no longer in orbit. This is unbelievable to them. Now, Losira, a female Caldanian who served as the commander of the Caldanian outpost and died around the millennium BC, is programmed as the outpost's computer to use as a holographically projected image of her for defensive purposes, folding flat when disappearing. Now, the first encounter with Losira touching the transporter room technician on the Enterprise, killing him, then D'Amato, then one of the engineering crew, is a cause for concern, because the cause of death is cellular disruption, as if every cell in the body had been blasted from inside, as Dr. McCoy. Lastly, Los touches Sulu. Luckily, Kirk intervened when she went for Kirk, so Sulu didn't die, but he was in pain when he was touched. Severe pain. Now, Spock is able to extrapolate, in a matter of seconds, the Enterprise has somehow been thrown 990.7 light years from its previous position. A memorable episode indeed.
The episode that I like next, number 8, is called The Way to Eden. I feel people truly misunderstand this episode. They see hippies in unusual clothes and thwarting authority, and they just think of it as a silly show of hippies. What happens is this group has stolen a spacecraft, and the Enterprise has to retrieve the spacecraft. But when they do, they're forcing the people over to the Enterprise because the craft blows up. Like you say, and then you see these hippies. But what people don't realize is that the leader of this group is Dr. Severin, and he's looking for peace and harmony. He's looking for the planet Eden. And the reason he's doing that is because he has contracted a disease from modern technology, that if he were to go to a primitive planet, he would spread a disease that would more than likely kill everybody on the planet. Spock is helping them find the planet Eden, and does come upon a planet that seems the coordinates. But the hippies are prisoners of the Enterprise, and Dr. Severin uses high wave sonic sounds that actually would kill people to escape the Enterprise and get down to the planet Eden. Is able to turn off the machine before it does kill everyone on the Enterprise. But they go down to the planet, and while they're down there, Chekhov touches a plant, and it turns out that the planet itself is acid. It burns Chekhov. They find the rest of the hippies, and their legs are burned. It just turns out that this actually very beautiful planet is poisonous, is toxic. Dr. Severin runs out of the shuttlecraft and climbs a tree, grabs a piece, because he does believe that he has made it to Eden. But when he bites the fruit, like I say, it's acid, and he does die of the poison. I guess this episode has a special meaning to me because my mother was given a drug when she was carrying, and instead of the drug doing good, it's harmed me. So I can sympathize with Dr. Severin in this case. So that's why I like this episode, or I have the feeling towards this episode.
Thank you, Leslie. The Way to Eden had some nice character moments as the Enterprise intercepts the Aurora, which is a stolen space cruiser. It eventually is beamed aboard its crew, a crew of renegades. One renegade being Tongo Rad, the son of Katulan ambassador, and whose involvement prevents Captain Kirk, under orders from the Federation, from arresting the group for theft. Kirk's sympathy for the renegade space hippies is nice. Spock's identification with them is even nicer, and even more so, Scotty's intolerance for them were particularly noteworthy for this episode. Another member of the group is Irina Galula, an acquaintance of Chekhov's and a dropout from Starfleet Academy. The group, led by Dr. Severin, a former university professor on Tiburon, rejects conventional society. Now, after being examined in sickbay, Dr. Severin is found to be a carrier for the deadly bacteria, as Leslie alluded to. Kirk finally asks Spock to speak to Dr. Severin to persuade his followers to stop their actions before they are charged under Federation laws and barred from continuing their for Eden. Charles Napier, who plays Adam in this episode, also co-wrote 2 of the songs that he sings in this episode.
Episode 7 is Day of the Dove. There's this entity that feeds off of hate, and there's a Klingon cruiser, and disabled Klingon cruiser. In fact, the cruiser blows up. Again, the Enterprise has to transport the survivors from the Klingon cruiser onto the Enterprise, and it just becomes this big battle. And instead of phasers, all of a sudden, all the phasers turn into swords or just primitive items. And this entity is just off of that the Klingons and the crew of the Enterprise has against each other. In fact, the entity is able to put in the minds of different people stories that actually don't even exist. I believe that Chekhov talks about how the Klingons killed his brother. Chekhov doesn't have a brother, but it just allows the hatred to exist, and they continue to fight. One thing that I find in this episode, I find funny, is the head of the Klingons is Khan, and he has his wife, Mara. And there's a scene where Chekhov is going to rape Mara. He's in the hallway, and he grabs her, and he's talking to her and all that. All of a sudden, Kirk shows up, and he throws Chekhov against the opposite wall. If you watch that scene very carefully, the makeup that's on Mara's face, on the actress's face, when it hits the wall, you see a smear of her makeup on the wall. So I always get a kick out of that episode because there's this obvious mistake in it. But anyways, back to the episode. Is Kirk is able to convince Mara about this entity, and between Kirk and Mara, they speak to Khan, and actually they do see the entity, and they realize that even as mortal enemies, they have to be friendly to make this entity disappear. You know, you won't find hate here. Go away. This was Michael Ansara's first role as Khan, and you will see an episode of Deep Space Nine.
Leslie, thank you. Day of the Dove has the Enterprise responding to a distress call from a human colony on Beta 12A. An extremely powerful non-corporeal being brings the Enterprise and Klingon ship in direct conflict with one another. Kirk's landing party find the planet abandoned until a Klingon ship arrives, and Kirk and his crew on the planet get captured. Kirk and his away team find themselves prisoners of the Klingons by Commander Kang, who claims they've declared an act of war on them. Kang is intent on taking charge of the Enterprise ship, but very soon, Kirk and his team beam back to the Enterprise with the Klingons before managing to trap them in the transporter beam. The Klingons get arrested by Kirk's people and escorted to quarters. Now, meanwhile, the Enterprise crew and the Klingons don't realize that a being of pure energy has followed them aboard the ship, the Enterprise. Now, this causes between the Enterprise crew and the Klingons, of course, under the influence from the energy being and suffering from paranoid mania. Chekhov is raping Mara, Kang's wife, in the corridor until Kirk and Spock stop him. Kang is in control of engineering. Kirk uses intership beaming for the first time through the Klingon defenses. Good spirits from both Kang's crew and Kirk's crew finally drive off the alien entity.
The sixth episode that I like is Alana of Troyes. This is sort of a taming of the shrew. To settle a treaty, Alana must marry this other planet's ruler, but while she's being transported there, she has a tutor that is trying to make this barbarian woman more sophisticated, domesticated, whatever you want to call it. But she ends up stabbing the tutor. So it's left to Kirk to teach her how to be a lady. But one thing that is revealed is that her species, if you touch her tears, it's like an addiction. It's a love potion. You just fall in love with her, and she's cry. Kirk does touch her tears, and now he's in love with her. In the meantime, the Klingons have been shadowing the Enterprise, and they can't figure out why the Klingons are being involved in this treaty between Alana and the other planet. But what turns out is there are these rocks on Alana's planet. I mean, like I say, they just consider them rocks. There's so many of them. And it turns out that they're dilithium crystals. The dilithium crystal device on the Enterprise has been sabotaged. Now, Alana is wearing the wedding necklace that has these rocks on it, which, like I say, turns out to be dilithium crystals. They takes off of the wedding necklace and creates a crude dilithium crystal device to replace the one that's been sabotaged on the Enterprise. Unbeknownst to the Klingons, now the Enterprise is able to go into warp, and they do get away from the Klingons. Alana fulfill promise. She does behave, does, like I say, taming of the shrew. But she too has fallen in love with Kirk. I mean, it wasn't necessarily supposed to go both ways, but she is in love with Kirk. But she does fulfill her promise to her on behalf of both planets, and leaves. And the end of the episode is kind of funny because McCoy is trying to find an antidote to her tears, and he comes up to the bridge and he's really excited. You know, I believe I've become upon an antidote that will cure Kirk of Alana's tears. And and Spock says to him, "We don't need it, Doctor. He already has a cure. The Enterprise."
I really like this episode, Elan of Troyes, as well. The story of a spoilt young ruler, Elan, and her fixed marriage is nicely done, proving the actors William Shatner in particular, with many emotions and humorous route, proves that Shatner is a great actor, as well as providing thought-provoking situations without easy answers. Kirk still doesn't know about the secrecy of the mission, which is called for because the Talon system is in the vicinity of the Federation Klingon border. Scientists who first reported on Alas called the men vicious and arrogant, and the women of this planet very special with a subtle mystical power that drives men wild. Now, this is how Alan's personality as well. Spock and Sulu determined that the sensor ghost that they found while scanning on the bridge is in fact a Klingon warship. Then Kirk is summoned again to Alan's room. He finds Petrie, ambassador from Troyes, lying in a pool of blood with a dagger embedded in his back. Alan's necklace, which was strung with uncut dilithium crystals, is used to reactivate the Enterprise's engines. Now the Klingon captain offers one last chance for surrender as he points the prize is draining its reserves and shields are buckling. Spock reports significant damage to the Klingon shields, while Chekhov says that the ship is badly damaged and is withdrawing at reduced speed. Now, this is in fact the first production to feature a Klingon spacecraft on screen, and it's a real beauty. My favorite spacecraft model in all of Star Trek across 5+ decades is the Klingon battlecruiser.
Episode 5 is the Cloudminders. Now, they are actually the same people, but some of them live up in this cloud above the planet, and they're into art. They live above the planet, and they're into music and art and the finer things in life, while the other half lives below and mines the people below called trucks, and they must mine the ore. But they're also brought up to the clouds, to the city in the clouds. And what the people don't realize is that there's this toxic fume that comes off of the minerals, and that's what retards these people. And once they're on the planet, once they're up above the mines, their minds start to clear, become basically as intelligent as the cloud minder. Vanna is one of the leaders of the troglodytes to get basically equal share. That, you know, we should be enjoying what's going on up above besides mining the ore down below. Kirk kidnaps Vanna and the head of the cloud minders and brings them down to a cave to try to prove that the fumes off of the ores is causing this confusion or craziness, is causing this abnormal behavior. And the attitude of the head of the guy in the city above is, how could something you can't see cause such a problem? But Kirk encases them actually in the cave. He seals it off, and he makes the head guy dig in the ore. And as time goes on, all of them are getting crazy. But Vanna, I guess, really realizes that Kirk head guy are just starting to act. Their behavior is just not normal. They do come to realize that it is the fumes and that masks are needed to mine the ore, and negotiations do begin on that planet. And that is my fifth choice.
Yes, thank you, Leslie. Kirk's effort to obtain a vital mineral are complicated by terrorists striking at this beautiful cloud city Stratus. Kirk and Spock beam down to the planet Ardana. They're to collect a consignment of Zenite, a special mineral that is required to halt a vegetation plague that is on the planet Merak 2. However, upon arrival, Kirk and Spock receive an unprovoked attack from troglodyte miners on this planet. They're soon rescued by the High Advisor Placis, who are invited by Placis to join him up high in their cloud city of Stratus. Now at Placis, they are at his home and they beat his beautiful daughter Droxine. They soon discover that what's been going on the conflict of the planet is interesting and puzzling. However, they investigate a little bit further. In the luxuriously appointed resting chamber, Kirk is asleep on a bed while Spock reclines in a chair, meditating on the contrasts between the two classes that live on the planet Ardana. He hears Droxine and leaves to talk to her about Vulcans. However, they fail to notice that a woman named Vanna lurks behind some columns nearby and then enters the resting chamber where Kirk is, putting a Morte blade to his neck. Kirk has this Morte blade to his neck, almost at the cusp of death. But Vanna then claims that she wanted to take Kirk with him and kill him. Now, after a heated negotiations, it's forced but not really settled. Placis then orders the Sentinels to remove Vanna from a torture device and demands Kirk and Spock return to the Enterprise or risk a diplomatic incident. After Kirk and Spock beam up, Placis advises the Sentinels to kill Kirk if he ever sets foot on Stratus again. Kirk and Spock are back on the bridge of the Enterprise. The crew now has 12 hours remaining to get the Zenite to Merak.
My fourth choice is the empath. Now, people have disappeared and landing party of the Enterprise are trying to find these people, and they beam down to a planet and they come across this mute, and what is discovered is that there is one race of people that is capable of saving only one planet from this galaxy that's about to go supernova, but they're trying to figure out which planet or which group of people they need to save. And this mute turns out to be an empath. She can basically read your mind. She also has the ability that if you're injured, she can touch you. If you have a scrape on your arm, the scrape will disappear off your and appear her arm and then disappear. But that isn't good enough for the other species. They want her to give up her life in order for her and her species to be the one for them to save. They find the missing members of the Federation, and they have died because the way they're trying to figure out, they do find the missing people and they have died because the way that this one species is testing other species, or in this case, this empath, is by torturing them and hoping that she will give up her life to save them, which she is unwilling to do. Now, she's a shiny to McCoy, and McCoy also likes her, and he even names her. He names her Gem. And the aliens have told the Kirk, Spock, and McCoy that they must choose among the three of them, one of them to be tortured for the experiment to see if Gem will save whichever one gets chosen. McCoy gives Kirk a shot, which knocks him out. Spock is very happy because he says, now this is really easy. Obviously, I should be the one for the experiment. But McCoy gives him a shot, knocks him out. So it's McCoy that's taken to the site for the experiment. When Spock comes to, they find McCoy and he's barely alive. When they try to run to help him, they're put into a force field, so they can't even go up to him. So it's just between Gem and McCoy. And Gem is reluctant, but she does try to heal him some. And it's very painful, but she's willing to touch him. He pushes her away. And finally, at one point, she does seem to give up. The idea of self-preservation is much stronger than dying for someone. Spock discovers that the force field that they're in is actually generated by their own emotions. So he's trying to tell Kirk that even though you see what's going on, you got to turn off your emotions and the force field will lessen. Spock is able to get out of the force field. Kirk is still stuck in the force field. But the end story is that they talked to this other species and they said she didn't need to die to prove that she wanted to help people survive or live. And they also say to these aliens that if you have the ability to do much to a person, you must have the ability to cure them. So these are intelligent beings, even though they came up with this crazy test that this person had to die in order to save her people. But they heal McCoy and they take Gem, and it's her planet that isn't be saved by the aliens. And that's the empath.
On a doomed planet, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy become the subjects of an alien experimentation whose mysterious intention involves a beautiful, empathetic woman named Jem. Well, this episode does have its moments, including the rarity for television of many finely acted and executed dialogue-less emotional scenes, and our Star Trek trio remain expertly engaged in their explanations. The shows the trinity of Kirk, Spock, and Bones, and they have very memorable moments in this episode, particularly of camaraderie and sacrifice. I still feel the Vians, or in this case the Vians, look eerily similar to Telosians and also like to experiment. The wind gusts of the planet and slow motions of movement with Kirk trying to reach Scotty in a rescue party that's not really there is a very climactic moment in imagination. It's McCoy's death sacrifice of himself for the sake of ensuring Kirk and Spock don't suffer during the Vine's experimentation is really what shows his love towards his friendship for Kirk and Spock. Thankfully, the mute woman Jem heals McCoy, but must endure his pain to do it.
The third episode is Requiem for Methuselah. The Enterprise has a disease, and they have to go down to and get this ore called Rhytelium. And they meet up with a man called Flint. And when Kirk starts describing the disease on the Enterprise, this man, Flint, talks about the Black Plague and decides that he is going to help them and invites them to his house, to his mansion, and they go there. And Spock is very curious because he sees paintings, he sees music that are like they've been painted by Leonardo da Vinci, or the music is by Brahms, and yet they're unpublished or unknown pieces of art. They are also introduced to a woman named Raina. And as usual, Kirk falls in love with Raina. It turns out that well, this episode is much like a Twilight Zone episode called Long Live Walter Jameson. Is for some reason unexplained, the person just seems to keep living forever. Living forever doesn't necessarily mean that it's the biggest blessed world. Flint has had wives and children and has watched them grow old and die, and he's very lonely. Actually, it turns out that Raina is an android, and she's actually one of many that he has built in the past. This Raina that exists right now is the best he's come up with, but she really doesn't have any emotions, and he's hoping that Kirk will awaken these emotions within her. It does turn out that, like I say, Flint has lived many years and has been many famous people, such as Methuselah and Solomon, Alexander the Great, and Leonardo da Vinci, and countless others. They find a room. Spock tells Kirk that maybe he should enter it alone, but Kirk wants to go into the room, and they enter the room together, and they, as I say, they find out that Raina is many androids that Flint has built. It comes to, if you want to call it a showdown, of whether Raina will stay with Flint, who has been good to her all these years, or if she would go with Kirk. And instead of disappointing one of them, she basically does. It's a sad episode. And actually I feel sorry for Flint. It's also revealed that because he left Earth, actually he has been aging and he is going to eventually die.
Thank you, Leslie. Our beloved Enterprise searches for the cure to a deadly fever plague as our trios of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy beam down to this planet in search of a Ritalin medicine. As this planet has rich natural Ritalin deposits, the landing party is then confronted by a hovering tin robot called Ep4. Then they meet the reclusive man named Flint. Requiem for Methuselah is about a man named Flint building his perfect woman who's a set of experimental androids before delving into the unusual age-generated difference that Methuselah seems to be Raina's father figure and also wants to be her lover. This is Mr. Flint we're referring to. Requiem for Methuselah does recognize that Raina should have a choice in these matters. Kirk shows Raina love, and she can't handle the overpowering choice of choosing emotion. Flint is clearly a mythical man from history. Oh, I love the mini model of the Enterprise caught in the frozen beam. It's a face of Kirk's appearing on the bridge's view screen, and to me it's interesting as he sees the crew on the bridge going about their duties, but frozen like statues in this episode.
Episode number 2 is For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy beam down to this asteroid, which is headed towards a planet. And if they can't stop this asteroid, it's go billion people. It turns out that the asteroid is actually a spaceship, and they're taken captive and taken below inside the asteroid, as I said, which is a spaceship. It's amazing. There is no small role. I feel like the whole show was described in this one scene when this old man comes to the room. That's where they came from. And they reply that they came from out there. And that's very confusing to the old man. And he goes into this dialogue of, many years ago, I climbed the mountains, even though it is forbidden. But things are not as they teach us. For the world is hollow, and I have touched the sky. And as it turns out, a computer has been guiding the spaceship for generations to another planet because the galaxy that they went to also went supernova. Boy, it seems how many episodes has there been where planets go or galaxies go super? Anyways, the computer, upon hearing what the old man has told Kirk and Spock and McCoy, kills him. He has a device. All these people have a device that's in their forehead, and he's killed for telling the truth, which I guess that's another reason that this episode is so powerful, is that you get killed for telling the truth. Anyways, the High Priestess, Natira, is in love with McCoy. And also at the very beginning of the episode, we discover that McCoy has a disease that he is going to die of. Most likely he has a year to live. And he tells Natira that he has this disease. And she would rather that he be her husband, live with her, and have the 1 year of happiness. It is decided that they are going to release Spock and Kirk, and McCoy is going to stay by on the planet to be with Natira. And they do get married. Actually, I don't know if people realize that McCoy does get married in the Star Trek episodes. Natira shows McCoy what it is to be part of this species, which includes getting the implant in the forehead. But she also shows him a book that they're supposed to read once the planet asteroid reaches the new planet for them to live on. McCoy, being true to Starfleet, does call up Kirk and tells them that he knows how to save everybody, but the computer starts to kill McCoy. And Kirk beamed down back into the asteroid, back into the spaceship, and removed the device from McCoy's forehead. McCoy tells them where the book is, and also the computer. It's not a nice computer, or again, it's protecting. It's interesting how computers hurt people without realizing the destruction that they're also causing. The computer starts heating up the room or the temple where they all are. McCoy is able to tell Spock where this book is, and Spock is able to read the book and figure out how to get inside the computer. They're able to fix I don't know if you want to call it that the computer is shorted out, or an error has caused the asteroid to go off in the slightly wrong direction, which Kirk and Spock are able to fix. And the planet or the spaceship, the planet is then back on and isn't going to run into this other planet. But Spock discovers that these people have a vast knowledge of medicine, and one of them happens to be a cure for McCoy's disease. McCoy, realizing that he truly belongs on the Enterprise, does go back with Kirk and Spock. He asks Natira to join him, but Natira, in her wisdom, says, just like you're needed on the Enterprise, I'm needed here to guide my people. And they say their goodbyes, and McCoy does go back to the Enterprise with Kirk and Spock. It's a touching episode, and I enjoy it immensely.
Thank you, Leslie. The Enterprise discovers a generational asteroid ship on a collision course with an inhabited planet. Oddly, though, the asteroid is not in any orbit, but follows an independent course through the local star system. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy beam down to the surface that appears geologically active, with a reddish sky. The leader is a beautiful woman, introduces herself as Natira. After a brief melee, Kirk, McCoy, and Spock get captured. McCoy shares a meaningful look with the leader Natira before he is knocked unconscious. Now on this asteroid, though, there's an oppressive, tyrannical deity preventing knowledge and truth from reaching its subjects. This is a humanist approach to a god of sorts. And to me, this is a fascinating one. 3 of our Enterprise heroes regain consciousness, as Leslie so eloquently put this scene together, for making a big scene in this episode. An old man's definitive poetic rendition that has true meaning to him is what makes the scene, after all, a very interesting one, when he enters the room and gives them an herb derivative to counteract the effects of the Oracle's attack, noting that many people on the ship have been punished in this same way. When they tell him they are not from Yanada, he recalls how he once climbed the mountains, even though it is forbidden. and found that of Yonada is not a planet. For the world is hollow, and I have touched the sky and the gods, he says, before he is collapsing and dying on the floor in the room. McCoy is then married to Natira later in this episode. It's a really good one.
The number one episode that I've chosen out of all the seasons is the Paradise Syndrome. It's a problem that they say all leaders have, is that you get tired of always being in command, always making decisions. And they've beamed down to a planet that an asteroid, here we go with an asteroid again. I'm sorry, I'm going nuts. The reason that they beamed down to this planet is there's an asteroid heading towards the planet. And they're trying to, well, I guess figure out if there's life on the planet, if there's some way to divert the asteroid. And they come upon a species of humanoids that look very much like Native Americans. Kirk is standing on the obelisk, and he requests to beam to the Enterprise. But instead, it opens up this door to the obelisk, and he falls inside. When he stands up, he accidentally activates something, and this electric beam shocks him in the head, which gives him amnesia. Later, he comes out of the obelisk as these maidens are to offer sacrifices to the obelisk, and they think that he is a god, that he's come out of the obelisk. What else could he be but a god? Kirk, when asked by the chief of the tribe what his name is, due to his amnesia, he's trying to say the name Kirk, but he's hearing. So they think he is saying Kurok, and that's what they start calling him. And they take him to the village, and a young boy who was fishing and caught in a net was dragged under into the water, and the medicine man looks at the boy and declares he's dead. But even though with amnesia, Kirk remembers things, and he's able to resuscitate the boy. But to these Native Americans, he looks like he's breathed life into a child. He's brought somebody back from the dead. So he truly is a god. And in fact, they even make medicine, which actually the real medicine man is not too happy about that. Later, the original person who was the medicine man goes to Naomi, who is the daughter of the chief, and she is supposed to marry the medicine man. And she explains to him, but you're not the medicine man anymore. Kurok is. So you and I cannot get married, which only angers him even more. And he wants to prove that Kirk is a fraud, or Kurok is a fraud. There's even a fight scene later where and Kirk is cut, and the medicine man says, "Behold, a god who bleeds." I mean, he knows that he's a fake. The story behind the obelisk and the medicine man, and actually the medicine man's son, is that the older medicine man don't see because he's passed away, died before he could tell his son that the obelisk was able to deflect any asteroid that came near the planet. So this young medicine man doesn't know how to work the obelisk. Anyways, Spock and on the Enterprise are trying to figure out something with the asteroid, and Spock tries to use the phaser of the Enterprise to cut the asteroid in half, and instead damages the Enterprise. That basically the Enterprise can only limp back to the planet, and they're hoping to figure out how to avoid asteroid hitting the planet, killing everybody. Kirk, who is the medicine man, has married Miriamani in the meantime, and she actually is pregnant. She is going, at least in her mind, is going to bear him a son. But the skies darken, and there's earthquakes and thunder and whatever, and the chief tells Karak, you need to go to the obelisk and get rid of, make this thing disappear. And Karak says, I don't know how to do it. And then, you came out of the obelisk. You must know. And he doesn't. And they bring Kirk and Miriamani to the obelisk, and they start stoning them. Kirk and Miriamani are on the obelisk, and they're being stoned by the people because Karak is not stopping this asteroid. They're angry. In the meantime, Spock and McCoy do beam down to the planet, and when they appear, it scares the people away. Spock, through mind meld, is able to get Kirk to remember that he's Kirk. Also, it's revealed that I'll call it hieroglyphics that are on the obelisk are pretty much like musical notes. So Spock is saying to Kirk, whatever you said to the Enterprise is what made the door open. And Kirk says, give me your communicator. And it's as simple as Kirk Enterprise opens up the door to the obelisk, and Spock and Kirk are able to go into the obelisk. Spock is able to activate the obelisk, which does deflect the asteroid away from the planet. The planet is saved, but Kirk goes up to McCoy to find out if Miriamani can be saved, and she is beyond saving. So one of the last scenes of the episode is Miriamani saying to Kirk or Kirk that, they'll be happy together. I shall bear you many fine sons. But dies. I think I chose this episode as number one because I think this episode shows you the range of acting that William Shatner had, where a lot of the other episodes he was just the captain shouting orders or punching, or again, the range of my field shows you in this episode is the reason why I made it number one. Anyways, I didn't say it at the beginning. My name is Leslie Hoffman. I am an original Trekkie. I love Star Trek. And I was lucky enough years later to become a stuntwoman and actually appear in episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager. And who would have thought a series that I used to watch as a young teenager that I would be part of such a empire. And Star Trek most likely will live forever. Anyways, long and prosper. Thank you.
Yes, the Paradise Syndrome is a very different episode. Now, the trio only has 30 minutes to explore the surface before leaving the planet. They return to the lake and look across at a village which houses an indigenous Native American-like tribe. As Leslie pointed out, it's an amazing acting performance for William Shatner, showcasing a Kirk or Kirk in a way that we rarely get. Kirk does get more involved than the Prime Directive would recommend, but he doesn't remember a thing about any of Starfleet's laws when doing so. In fact, with his memory loss preventing him from divulging any of his culture's worst secrets in any way, the Prime Directive to me becomes a moot consideration. Now, this episode gives a very interesting what-if scenario in regard to what might happen if Kirk gave up space adventuring to settle down into a more mundane existence and paternal lead as a father to his baby that was never born. Now, I want to thank you for joining us here on A Captain's Log streaming at warp speed. For Lili Fox-Lim and Leslie Hoffman, I'm Bryan Kreutz. Be sure to come back next week as our consulting producer Scott Chip Selstad joins me to discuss Star Trek: The Next Generation home video DVDs with our reviews and rankings starting with 4 of the season 1 episodes. Now, Lili is without bringing home a more fascinating score of her Klingon operas and her language lessons that you won't want to miss here on A Captain's Log, streaming at warp speed. Bye for now.